Welcome boys and girls, Christine here with a discussion about Alith Anar, the Skaven High Elf in Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires, and his superb campaign in patch 7.0. Alith Anar has always been a powerful legendary lord in the game. That's because he has the stock stance, which allows him to engage an army on the field with a chance of ambushing them. And Alith Anar does have a fairly good capability of ambushing people. He has Shadow Warriors and Shadow Walker benefits, and he also has Spectre. So he's nullifying the stock stance downside in terms of ambushing, and in fact, he is even better ambushing than most legendary lords in a campaign. That's one of the things the Skaven can do. They can ambush armies on the field of battle with the stock stance. So can Skarsnik, by the way. On top of that, he also has the Shadow Realm pathways. So the Shadow Realm's pathways are an underway stance, which allows Alith Anar to navigate the campaign map better. Furthermore, he also has the unique Shadow Walker units, which are just basically better Shadow Warriors. But he has them inherently, and Alith Anar is a free campaign. If you own Warhammer 2, or I'm not quite sure how it's going to work right now with the way they've changed the Immortal Empires, but if you own any High Elven content, possibly, or just Warhammer 2, you can play him and get Shadow Walkers. On top of that, he has these assassination missions. These are randomized from the beginning of the campaign. But what's great about these missions is they give you a bunch of influence and money. They can be a bit buggy, but they do open up a large number of possibilities. Now, some of these are not necessarily great. So, for instance, I got one against Greenskin that starts in your colic. There's no way you're doing that. So, some issues with regards to that. But I also got one against one of the two Dark Elf lords that Karen Carr starts with. And I destroyed them and then took Slaver Point, got a peace agreement, and sold Slaver Point back to them. Because you do have choices in this campaign, and that's the aspect. You could just find Karen Carr and take it over, but then that exposes you to Hellebron, to Bellicor, etc. So not wiping out your enemies is actually wise. And this is why you can call him a Skaven. It's not about ambushing or the underway, it's those dynamics in terms of diplomacy, like using your own opponents as either a shield or against them. For instance, in this particular situation, I have a mission against an army in the Circle of Destruction. So what I'm going to do over here is going to declare war. This is Tarx's initial enemy faction that he gets to deal with. He's right there. He's about to attack. And what I am going to do is I am going to move Liadrin, who is one of my lords, and I'm going to transfer all of these units to Alith Anar and just, take over the settlement. But once I've taken over the settlement, there are so many sweet possibilities that are unlocked as a result of that. Because you see, I can, for instance, just go over here and take the province, capture it, and use it as a springboard. But on the flip side, there are different choices that I could make as well. For instance, one of the things that Alith Anar wants to do is destroy Malekith. But on top of that, he also needs to take control of Nagaryth. And you also want to take control of the Shrine of Cain for one of your quest items. So there's a good amount of money and your victory conditions require it. And that creates another choice. Do you stay over here and fight Malekith after dealing with Tarx, or do you do something a bit more sneaky in respect to that? Because one of the things you can do, for instance, is I can declare war on Tarx, I can then fight him, and then I can just sell the Circle of Destruction to Malekith, go to war with Clan Septic, but I probably do need to at least wipe out Tarx's army. But then I can just leave Tarx's faction alive, and then get to deal with, and then just neutralize in a significant way, neutralize Malekith. Because Malekith, the way the AI works is the AI will always go to war against certain factions, right? Like, Malekith has a tendency of going to war with Grombrindal once he's wiped out the Skaven, or Grombrindal goes to war with him. But what you can do when you're playing as Alith Anar is you can just say, okay, that is a thing. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to provoke a war between Malekith and Tarax. And once I've provoked that war, Malekith will rush his forces over here to deal with Tarax, which will leave him exposed to Grombrindal, who almost certainly will go to war at one point or another with Malekith. That gives me time. Again, you have that choice. The downside of that choice is that you're going to lose favor of the Phoenix King. So the way this works is you gain favor through battles, you lose it through diplomacy or looting, sacking settlements in Ulthuan. But through diplomacy with this Order faction, so me making deal with, say, Silustra or Malekith, etc., will lose me favor of the Phoenix King. And what that results in is a kind of dynamic in a campaign where you end up having to balance it out between these legendary lords, between these factions, on how really you want to handle this specific situation. Do you want to just go to war directly with Malekith and Dark Elves and just spend all your time? Do you want to engage in diplomacy? Do you want to abandon your initial campaign area in favor of going back to Ulthuan? You kind of need to do all of them, and that's something that creates an amazing campaign dynamic. Now, where does Alith Anar benefit significantly from the High Elf rework? Well, first off, the research tree over here in cultural advancements will eventually give him vision over various areas, as well as all kinds of different benefits over here in a campaign, including campaign movement reach. That's one of the first things to mention. The research tree does end up benefiting him quite a bit. On top of that, because of the addition of Mist Mages, Oceanids, Bolt Throwers being tier 2 as opposed to tier 3, Skycutters, etc., Handmaidens being tier 3, he ends up having a lot more variety in terms of the units he has. It's not a campaign where you just want to get Shadow Warriors and Shadow Walkers. Well, you kind of do for a Leaf's army, but not just those, because like Alith is great with them because he reduces their upkeep by a fairly substantial amount, but not necessarily for your other armies, your secondary or tertiary armies as well. So you do have that complex dynamic to deal with. On one hand, you want to defeat the Dark Elves. On the flip side, you can't ignore the dynamic in Ulthuan either. You could, if you believe that Alariel is going to end up taking Nagaryth, and then you can just use the vassalization for patronage in order to get control of her territory, but bear that aspect in mind, that depends on randomization with AI. So sometimes the High Elves will do very well in Ulthuan, sometimes they'll struggle. Usually Elfarian, Tyrion, and Alariel do end up winning, though there's degrees of winning and depends on the speed that we're talking about. So you can either rush for confederations, or you can rush to capture territory, or all those kind of things combined to a degree or another. That's the thing that makes it great. So you have a really good ambushing army, but you also have really a Skaven campaign playstyle in better ways than the Skaven actually are. On top of that, Alith Anar also has gotten 2 new climate editions, Temperate and Temperate Island. The big problem of his campaign has always been that he only had 2 climates, which is Wasteland and Frozen. Now, it wasn't a problem from a perspective that the campaign didn't work, it just meant that it was a short campaign only. By giving him Temperate and Temperate Island, it opens up significantly more territories in the campaign to deal with, which makes the longer term potential of this campaign significantly better. Which means that I would dare say this is my favorite High Elf campaign in the game at the moment. Sure, he doesn't have the unique units of, say, for instance, Elfarian or the Dragons of Imric, though depends on when you confederate Imric, you might get those dragons anyway, but the benefits he ends up having in his campaign do make your work. You have a good amount of mobility, you have a good amount of capability of dealing with your assassination targets, especially because of the invocation of Morai Heg, which summons an assassination hero that will never fail. So you summon a Hand of the Shadow Crown. Now, this requires you to just issue a commandment, Reaver Patrols, first and foremost. So when you take control of the Granite Hills, just issue this commandment, the invocation becomes available, and you probably want that assassination hero as quickly as possible. But yeah, for instance, in this situation, I am going to try and get Malekith to fight Tarax, especially if Tarax does attack me. Probably should have waited one turn to declare war on him, but I guess we'll find out on that what he ends up doing. He might attack, actually. But then I would deal with Sinnelleos, I would march south, I would conquer the territory, and then I would return, right? Once I've stabilized the situation on Ulthuan, likely taking Agareth, selling into Alariel. But again, you have those decisions to make, and what decisions you do end up making will determine the course of your campaign. Between the randomization of assassination missions, though, yes, it's not especially great that it's randomized from turn 1, because you can get some good contracts, you can also get some really bad ones, so I think that entire system could use a update, but all the same, it does open up a lot of possibilities, and no one campaign of Alith Anar will ever really be exactly the same as another, just because of those assassination missions. And then when you add faction potential, the decisions you have, it does create a fairly dynamic campaign every single time you play it. And that's why this is one of the best campaigns from 7.0. Not one of the best campaigns in the game, that's a different discussion. You got Malachi, you got Arbol, you got Karl Franz to conserve, but certainly one of the better campaigns that Creative Assembly has done in 7.0. Questino signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications. Stay tuned for more.